All right, so Steve Bannon is the last person I want to hear from when it comes to talking about a mass school shooting, but he decided to weigh in, and of course he said something really stupid.
A lot of questions. Here's the point. This is why Burquam's down there and why we're over this. We have to get a timeline. I mean a timeline down to the second of what happened here, because this does not make sense. There's so many loose ends, and quite frankly, a week after it's happened, it's unsatisfied. It's unsat. These things, at least on the timeline, should have been put up. And we got to find out more about this gunman. This is going to be tied to the open borders. You watch. It's going to be tied to the open borders.
That's
part of it.
That's
part
the
of
point.
It.
Yes.
Dr. Gina, you also.
So in the wake of the shooting, there was a 4chan rumor that started spreading that the guy who did the shooting was a leftist, trans, and an undocumented immigrant. Turns out he wasn't a leftist, he wasn't trans, and he wasn't an undocumented immigrant. He's an American citizen. Paul Gosar, one of the most loathsome congresspeople in the country, tweeted that he was a leftist, a trans person, and an undocumented immigrant. They just run with, they don't care if it's true. This is their narrative, they're going to stick to it. Now, eventually he ended up deleting the tweet because it was too obvious that it was dead fucking wrong. But Steve Bannon's out here like, this is going to be tied to open borders. How's it going to be tied to open borders? He was an American citizen. Unless what Steve Bannon means is, hey, look, since he was Hispanic, that is an open border enough. So, like, in other words, any brown-skinned or Hispanic American, are they really American? Because even though he was an American citizen, maybe his mom wasn't, or maybe his grandma wasn't. So that person got in through the open border, and that's why he was able to do the shooting. So he's sort of giving the game away here a little bit, man. Like any sort of plausible deniability he tries to leave himself about whether or not he's a bigot is sort of out the window with a comment like that. Because really the argument is, well, even though he was fully an American citizen, he's not American enough in my eyes. And the reason why he's not American enough is, I mean, look at his skin tone. Look at his ethnicity. And look, he barely masks it, but at least previously he somewhat masked it. Now there's no masking it. This isn't masking it. You know? It's like only like people of European origin count to Steve Bannon. It's crystal clear now in a way that at some point in the past it wasn't as clear. But this is clear.
Can I give one more caution just on that mental health argument? Everybody wants to take the pressure off of guns and put it on mental health. I totally get that. But as somebody who spent better than a decade of her life studying mental health, you do not want the Joe Biden Department of Mental Health and Gun Safety to be formed, to be what they culminate out of this crisis. That is the most dangerous.
What the fuck are you talking about? Nobody even floated that shit. But in other words, her point is, don't do shit on mental health. I love that, because at least she's being honest, because what happens with a lot of people on the right is they'll say, don't talk about the guns, let's only talk about mental health. But then if you were to propose a bill like, okay, let's do universal mental health care for everybody, they'd be like, nah, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, even though we just were screaming about mental health for a week straight. We don't actually want to do anything for mental health. At least she's wearing that shit on her sleeve. But she did just make up that there's like the Joe Biden fucking mental health. That's not, nobody's even talking about that.
Thought ever. This is not about that. This is about sticking to the laws that work. If our wall had been built and if we had the rule of law enforced, this shooting would never have happened in these.
If the wall had been built, what the fuck does the wall have anything to do with this? He was an American citizen. And if law and order had been enforced. Well, look, on that point, yeah, if the cops did their fucking job, if they actually entered the room when they were supposed to, then maybe it would have been stopped. So maybe there's a problem. Look, you never saw a faster victory lap in human history than from the defund the police crowd as soon as this police department got caught doing what they were doing, which was violating every single process and procedure that they were supposed to do. The defund the police crowd were like, bitch, we were trying to tell you, dog. We were trying to tell you for the longest time. Look at this. Look at this. They, like 40% of all the local taxes in Uvalde go to the police department, and these motherfuckers were sitting there with their thumbs up their asses as kids were getting murdered and 911 calls were coming in. Oh my God, help, little Timmy is bleeding. All right. They weren't doing anything. In fact, it was worse than that. They were holding back and tasing some of the parents and arresting some of the parents who were like, we're going to rush in if you don't rush in. So at least on the law and order point, yeah, if they had done their job, then maybe we wouldn't be in this situation.
Children and adults would be alive today.
Okay, well, that's the end of it. Steve Bannon, between her saying the thing about the wall and him saying the thing about this is going to be tied to the open border, they're just wearing it on their sleeve now. It is so obvious. It is so brazen. If you have brown skin, if you're of Hispanic origin, you're just not American to me, even if you are literally American. Which means, he's clearly showing, white nationalism signs here, if not just outright saying it. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.